Welcome into the Off-Brand Sports Podcast. In today's episode, we have a few news stories to go over, more than we've had recently, and we're also going to be doing our deep dives on the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The first news story I want to touch on is Cam Newton to the Patriots. Pretty high-profile signing for this point in the offseason. What does this do for you guys? Does this move the needle, and if so, how much? Let's start with you, Zach.
This makes them a Super Bowl contender for sure.
Ooh.
You don't? Oh, you guys don't think so? Okay, I like
I don't
that.
agree. No,
I think adding Cam Newton is a big add for them. Obviously, they needed a quarterback. Obviously, after losing Tom Brady. Yeah, that's about it. I think it's just a big signing for them.
Yeah, the Jarrett Stidham conversation is over. It looked like he was going to be the starter. He will not be now. It's Cam Newton. I don't think there's any debate on that.
I'm going to disagree.
The only real thing is what Cam Newton are we getting? Do you think there's a competition there?
I think there's at least somewhat of a competition inside that Auburn alumni quarterback room.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. They're both Auburn.
Yeah, they both are Auburn. I just don't know, dude, Cam is still, we don't know how his injury is healed. And the last couple of seasons...
looks washed up.
Yeah, exactly.
You think he's washed up?
Dude, he's played the really physical style of quarterback for the last 9 seasons. And just because of that, he's been injury prone. He's missed a lot of games. And there's a reason that Carolina did not bring him back. If we're looking at it, what is a better franchise over the last 20 years, Carolina Panthers or New England Patriots here?
Well, that's a crazy comparison.
I'm not I agree. I think that Cam Newton last year definitely looked like a washed-up quarterback, but Jarrett Stidham's unproven. This to me says that they don't really have full faith in him, and I think even a washed-up Cam Newton, if that's what he is at least better than a rookie who's doesn't have a ton going for him. I think you might be right. I think they'll take a look. If Stidham shows off in camp, then who knows? Maybe he does win that starting job, and this is just a kind of really a splash signing for nothing. But I think that the job is Cam's to lose at least. But
okay,
I don't think that this makes them a good a great team. I don't feel a whole lot better about the Patriots. I still don't think that they're a playoff team even with Cam. But I do think he's the starter.
Okay, but really quick. So what I was going off of, if the Panthers didn't have faith in him, and he signed what, $1.5 million 1-year deal with the Patriots?
Or he signed a league min, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, it was $1.5 million 1-year deal with the Patriots with incentive boost, obviously. But still, yeah. I mean, OBJ came out and tweeted, it's oh, how are you going to disrespect my guy like that? But
Right.
Then, dude, the Patriots were the only team, from what I've heard, that were showing any interest in Cam Newton. And if Carolina was willing to move off of him, the dude won an MVP with them, brought them to a Super Bowl, had a 15-1 season with the Carolina Panthers. If they were willing to move off of that, then why the hell should we have all this faith in the Patriots' decision to bring him in? That's my whole question with this.
Oh, I completely agree. You're seeing a lot of articles that you'll see a lot coming out that the Patriots are a Super Bowl contender right now, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. But I do think that this is a starting quarterback level signing, especially because they don't have much in their organization to begin with. I think that if he had gone to Chicago and was competing with Nick Foles, I still think he wouldn't be the starter. But in New England, where there's not a whole lot there, I think this is a signing that's been in the works for a while, and they were planning on having some kind of vet, whether it be Cam or Jameis Winston might have been their other plan, who was going to be their starter. I think this tells me that they never really envisioned Stidham starting for them, and they were looking for a veteran option, and at this point they're well, the best left on the market is Cam.
You see, I think that the New England Patriots are up there with the most interesting teams this year, though, because Cam Newton is a former MVP winner. So it's not like he's never proven anything. He proved that he was the best player in the league, by definition, by winning that MVP. But still, the last couple of seasons of Cam Newton have not proven anything to me that is showing that he can bring that like Super Bowl contending Patriots back into life.
Yeah.
However, if he can prove to be very serviceable with the defense that the Patriots already have, and maybe if they can figure out how to bring in another, weapon for Cam to work with, you can't really count out the Patriots.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I lost my train of thought there for a second, but Cam Newton is not an old quarterback. He's in his early 30s, which for a quarterback is kind of the extended prime window. So usually with a quarterback, I'm looking at 35, and if you regress after 35, I'm not expecting a comeback year by
Philip Rivers.
At Cam Newton, yeah, exactly. Cam Newton at his age, I still think there's a chance for him to have a comeback year. Maybe it's just been nagging injuries that have kept him down, and maybe he's been able to recover from those, and maybe we do see maybe not the MVP type Cam Newton, but high-end starter Cam Newton, and we do see maybe not a Super Bowl contender Patriots team, but a playoff contender Patriots team.
One interesting note that I have is Ron Rivera came out and said, "Oh, I would not be betting against Cam Newton," but isn't that what he's kind of already done?
When he didn't keep him on the Panthers?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to come out and publicly say, "Yeah, we don't believe in that guy. That's why we let him go." So we don't believe him on the Patriots either. He's not going to come out and say that publicly. But let's move into our next story here, and let's talk a little bit of MLB. They're coming back, but they're having some issues with players not wanting to play. Ian Desmond was the big one today, at least in the Colorado sports world, who said that he is opting out of this season. So what does this mean for baseball?
Obviously, this is scary for the whole league. Ian Desmond may be the first one out of many players to decide they don't want to play, especially out of recent outbreaks in multiple states around the country. This is what scares me about the comeback in later this month, is players are not going to want to come back to any sport. This doesn't just apply to the MLB, but that's the scariest thing to me, is players decide they, and then the league just won't happen. Just no sports again because too many big players are opting out, and that's what my biggest fear is.
I think that's a valid fear. I don't think it will extend to other sports, and that's mostly because baseball is coming back to play a season, and the other sports are coming back to play playoffs, and that's sunk cost fallacy at that point, where they've already invested so much into the season that they want to finish it out. So I don't think that it'll extend to other sports, but there's a chance that it does.
That's a good point.
Definitely for baseball, it's a little scary. Who else, especially when the first guy, it's tough, but when you've already seen someone else do it, then it gets a little bit easier to say, hey, I don't know if I want to play either. And then there's kind of the ripple effect. How many players don't want to play?
For one, he was not the first one. Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross will also not be participating. But for two, I'm going to kind of be devil's advocate on Billy's point. The NBA and NHL players, from what I understand, will not be making any more money. Whereas the MLB players playing a full season here, this is their salary for the season. Am I incorrect on that? So I feel like coming back to play the season in which they are relying to get their salary on is more of an incentive than going into a bubble in which they're not going to be making any money.
Right.
That's also
yeah.
Well, okay. My counterpoint to that would be that while the NBA and NHL players aren't directly making money off of this playoffs, they all know that particularly in the NHL, they know that the cap situation for the next few years directly hinges on whether or not this is able to play out, whether they're going to get revenue from these playoffs. So if they do decide not to play, they will lose money in future years based on the cap not being able to increase or maybe even decrease.
Same with the MLB, though.
True, that's fair enough. But I think that there's definitely financial incentive for everyone, and I think the whole the ability to win a championship, is going to incentivize enough players that I believe they'll all be playing.
But we've seen that the NBA,
maybe not all,
the
but
NBA
most.
There's more players in NBA that have come out and said that they're not playing the MLB so far.
Yeah.
True.
It is scary. Just
I don't
to see
know.
this
We'll
going
have to
on,
wait
for
and
sure.
see on that.
I mean, I think there's more of an incentive for the MLB players to come back, mostly due to the fact that their salary hinges on them coming back and playing baseball games.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I was worried for my well-being, traveling to, I feel like what the NBA and the NHL are doing, where there's going to be 2 hubs or a single hub where all teams are going to stay and you're not going to risk travel and all that stuff. I mean, if you're just traveling 60 games a year, I don't know how that was meant to break down, but I'm assuming it's not going to be an all-in-one hub. I mean, you're going to just increase the risk. So if you're worried about your health, I mean, I can understand swaying away from the MLB and still being okay with the NHL and the NBA format still going on.
Yeah, that's a good point,
Yeah.
Karim. However, the MLB is structuring it to be as feasibly healthy as possible. They are only playing interleague games. I think they're playing upwards of 40 games within their own division, and then 20 games outside of their division amongst other NL or AL teams. If I understood this whole or this whole restart format correctly. So although it's not completely perfect and it's not like a bubble situation, they are trying to figure out a way to make it as safe as possible to come back and play. And another thing is that baseball is not a high contact type of sport. In terms of social distancing, there's a reason that the Korean Baseball League has already come back, right?
Right.
You
Yeah,
have
they've been back for a
people
while.
standing way out in the outfield. The only type of contact that they would ever have amongst, other teams is if they hit a single and they have to dive into first base or whatever,
Right. I mean, my thinking is, if you're in a hub, if you're in the NBA, you're sitting in Disneyland, you're staying there, you're coming there a month before this playoff even happens, and everyone that's in the NBA will stay in that area. There's not going to be a lot of travel in and out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're playing in the MLB, where even if you're just staying in your division, you're still traveling, you don't have a home base, you don't know what the other team's doing. I feel like it's just a little more.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, I don't. Yeah.
But do we, for one, I know this is kind of a tangent, do we actually believe and trust that the NBA players are going to be staying in this bubble? Not venturing out?
But I mean, we can't trust anyone to follow all the rules perfectly.
Right.
So no, I don't think that everyone's going to stay in the bubble.
Right.
But we'll have to see. I think that they might have an issue just that their bubble's in Florida, which is already pretty much the biggest hotbed, at least in the U.S., for the COVID at the moment.
Because
So
they ease restrictions
I think the
so
NBA
easy.
might struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, of all the leagues right now, the NHL seems to have the best situation going on as far as all this. You haven't heard of many, if any, NHL players saying they're not going to play, which is good.
That's because
But
hockey
we'll have
is...
to see on
hockey
that.
players are tough and don't whine about a lot of things. Kind of just do their job if they're making millions of dollars playing a game. But that's a gripe that I'll get into on a different podcast.
Definitely. All right. Marshall, any other news stories you want to touch on before we get into our deep dives and bets here?
Well, the Nuggets closed down their team facility, staying inside the state,
That's
but
right.
it is a national news. I feel like a couple of really big,
Yeah.
storylines have impacted, the Denver area here recently. The Nuggets did
Yeah.
close down their training facility exactly a week before they're supposed to be leaving for their training camps in Orlando. What I hear is that they are still supposed to travel, but what are these types of implications? Because, they're calling it the traveling team. It's a group of people that are supposed to be going into that bubble affiliated with the team. And what I hear is there's 2 positive tests and their facility closed down. And so what happens if a team gets to Orlando gets to Orlando, goes through training camp 3 days before a game is supposed to happen, what happens then if a couple of people like test positive for corona? Like
Right.
just say that
That's-
the Lakers 2 days before I forget who they're supposed to play on their opening day. But 2 days before that happens, LeBron James and Kyle Kuzma test positive for coronavirus. How is this going to like affect?
Right.
the
And this
flow
is a
of the
question
plan.
that I feel like is not talked about enough. We've touched on it a few times in the past, but this is not like a question that gets asked a lot. Like what happens when the inevitable happens? When a player on a team like Rudy Gobert in the beginning gets test positive with coronavirus. That's going to happen inside the bubble no matter what you do. What happens after that is you take that one player out, okay, now maybe there's another player on the team asymptomatic with it. How are you going to handle that?
How many tests can you get?
Yeah.
Like how many tests until we have to shut it all down?
That's
Yeah.
that's the thing that scares me.
Rudy Gobert
Yeah,
pretty
I-
much
like-
shut down all of American sports.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
He did.
I don't think that would happen again. I think if we had one positive test, we would continue playing at this point. But if they start piling up, then definitely, we're gonna have issues. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. I'm sure they have plans in place that we don't know about, but since we don't know about them, I'm worried at how effective they're gonna be. So we'll definitely have to wait and see. Like even if these playoffs and seasons do start, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they finish.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of all I have to say about that.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get into our bet segment today. So we're recording a little bit late again, so we're gonna give you guys our bets, but a couple of Zach's is resolved and mine is partially resolved, but we're gonna give them to you anyway. Zach, since yours has been resolved, why don't you kick us off here?
I bet on the English Premier League. I can't remember what game, Billy, if you could help me out real quick.
You took Man U and Brighton to tie.
Man U and Brighton to tie, and apparently they did not tie, so I lost on that one.
Karim might be mad
No,
about that
they
one.
did not. Zach and I were competing this week, so I actually also bet on that game. I bet on Man U to win, and I parlayed it, so I had Man U and Arsenal to win. I bet on both these teams before, and they both lost for me, so I was trying to give them some redemption, So I took Man U to win. They did, which is the reason Zach lost, but I'm still happy about it. Sorry, Zach. So they were minus 137 to win that one. My other team is Arsenal, so minus 225 to win versus Norwich City. If they pull that one out, I will win my bet this week with overall plus 151 odds. Marshall, what was your bet this week?
Really quick, Zach, I'd like to
What?
ask you a question.
Okay, what?
Last Wednesday's episode, or I think it was our last published episode, when you were trying to figure out a bet, were you wanting to bet on Dustin Johnson to win?
Yes.
Yes, I was.
And Marshall talked him out of it
Yes.
for our viewers.
I did talk him out of
Oh
it.
And he
my
went-
I
God.
did, so I'm going to
Instead.
put that one on myself. Because Dustin
Zach
Johnson
would
ended
be-
up winning.
That would have been big time.
Zach would not only have taken the lead in the segment, he would have taken the lead by a mile.
Yeah,
I
that
just
would've
didn't
been
see
like
it happen.
Marshall talked him
$500.
down.
But I guess that's my knowledge on golf betting. So,
That would happen. That's what happens.
anyways, my bet is a futures bet. It's the Mile High Mega Boost at plus 5280 odds.
Yes.
Mile High City.
All this coming from DraftKings, by the way.
Yes. Plus 5280 odds for the Nuggets to make the Western Conference Finals and the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Although
So-
not
I
the
love
greatest
those
odds.
I've actually put money on that for myself.
Yeah, not
No
the greatest
kidding.
odds. I will take plus 5280 odds, not only because, high payout, but that's kind of just sick that it's 5280.
And it's very
Yeah,
plausible.
and I feel like that's
It could
each
happen.
team.
It
I
could
feel like that's
happen.
each team going one step further than they're expected to. The Nuggets expected to at least make the conference semis. If they can win that one, then they'll hit their mark. And the Avs kind of the favorites out west. So if they can win the West and then go one step further to win the Cup, it's just each team kind of going one step further. Before we do close out the bet segment, I have to give these two a little bit of shit. Because you might notice some stat corrections on our layout today. That is because the way we did this, the first 2 weeks we just placed the bets on our own, but then after that, starting in week 3, we were able to get a separate account, so we can all place the same bets on the same DraftKings account now. When we did that, I asked these two, okay, what were your results for the first 2 weeks? And they both told me, we lost both.
I couldn't remember.
Turns out, when I went back to look, they had both won their bets. Zach actually hit on the best odds any one of us has hit on. So we made some corrections, so you'll see it on the template this week. Last week we thought that I was actually in the lead. Turns out that it was Zach. Then me, then Marshall, and now this week it is flipped. So Marshall's in the lead, followed by me, and then Zach, at least as of now. By the time you see this, I may have overtaken Marshall if Arsenal wins. We will wait and see, but it definitely won't be edited because it won't, just based on the timing of it. So,
Zach,
if you've seen the stat corrections, that's why.
I'm gonna keep giving you bet advice.
Yeah, let me know.
And I would recommend not taking it. Yeah.
Next time,
but it just goes to show. It goes to show how much we care about the sports we're currently betting on. I don't know. We might have. Karim, you there?
Yep. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, we didn't lose Karim. Okay, so let's get into our next segments here. We've been doing basketball first, so let's continue that trend. Deep dive here on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Contender or pretender? Just initial impressions. For me, this team, last week we talked about a team with some star power and then not a lot of depth. I feel like this week we're talking about the absolute opposite. This is a team that's got a bunch of pretty good players, and really the biggest star they have is an aging Chris Paul. So not a lot in the way of superstar power here. Karim, what are your initial impressions here of the Thunder?
I mean, man, I think you said it. I think everyone expected them to just be rebuilding, and I mean, they're third in the Northwest, which, as we know, is a tough division to compete in. You got Utah, you got Portland, you got Denver, obviously. So
Yeah.
the fact that they're still in the talks a little bit is just baffling. I mean, for what they got from just shipping out Russ from Houston,
Yeah, it's pretty much
that's huge. And now they're still competitive. I mean, like you said, Billy, they're okay. I mean,
yeah.
obviously they got Andre Roberson. Gotta rep the Buffs, you know.
We can't rep the Buffs. Go Rams.
No, well, I mean, whatever. I mean, like you said, CP3. I still think he's a really great point guard. He's just aging, and I mean, Danilo Gallinari, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're just all solid players.
Yeah.
That would probably be in a rotation anywhere across the league. So the fact that they're all playing, you know, it makes sense. On paper, they don't look that bad. They just really are surprising a lot of people. So
yeah,
that's my initial thought. I think they're surprising. I think they might be outplaying what their actual potential is.
I don't just think that, I know they are. Like you guys have kind of touched on, they have, a bunch of depth. They are outperforming what my initial thoughts of them doing for this season. But they do have some solid players. I was talking to these guys off air earlier, and I kind of see this Oklahoma City Thunder team as the old early 2010s Nuggets teams with Ty Lawson and Danilo Gallinari and Andre Iguodala.
It's still got Gallinari even.
Yeah, exactly. Just a bunch of really solid players that were pushing for the second round. They can kind of beat you in waves. I mean, they have 3 players that are averaging 19 plus points per game. Chris Paul, who's averaging 17 plus, and then just a bunch of really nice role players. Nerlens Noel, Steven Adams is one of my favorite centers in the league to watch, just because he's just a monster.
My guy Luguentz Dort, the undrafted rookie, has worked his way into the lineup a little bit. Gotta love that guy.
Fuck the Lugans.
But yeah, I'm just not in love with this team. Like you guys have said, Chris Paul's like their quote unquote superstar, even though like he's not a superstar anymore. He's 34
Yeah.
years old. 34 years old. But still has kind of brought a really nice like winning culture into that locker room. Kind of, a trade in the offseason between, Houston and OKC that I thought was totally weighted in Houston's favor, kind of shot back and, like OKC is breathing down their necks.
Yeah.
So
I mean, how many first
Definitely.
round picks did they get from that trade?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me.
Dude, I don't know. I
A
want
lot.
to say this. I think they picked up like 6 first rounds just total throughout last offseason.
Yeah, they had a lot
6,
of
dude.
draft capital.
And it's not like the NHL where you can draft a first round pick and they're typically like you don't know if they'll be a 1C or a 4C.
Or just not make the NHL. Whereas like in the
Right.
NBA, if you're like a first round pick, you should definitely be playing in the NBA.
You're
The
proving a
weird
little
thing
bit.
about
yeah.
the NBA, yeah, the weird thing in the NBA to me is just the willingness to trade like super distant future picks.
Yeah.
Like the NBA teams are trading 12-year-olds basically, and like in the NHL, you never see anyone trade a pick more than 2 years out.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, any thoughts on the Thunder here?
Yeah, I guess to me, you guys have hinted on it. They're just right now a team in limbo. You said they have 6 first round picks. They need to, ride the wave. Ride the wave. They're in position to, become good. They just need to hang out for a little bit. Maybe look at trading Chris Paul to a contender next year or the year after once you establish some good prospects. So
Definitely.
right now, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Billy.
I think so. Like basically, the way I view the Thunder is almost all their they've probably got 4 guys who I think are top half of the league starters at their position, but just no, there's no Jokic, there's no Westbrook on this team, there's no LeBron, anything like that. There's just not that superstar. So getting into our verdicts here, contender or pretender, this is a team that ahead of schedule on their rebuild, but no, they're not a contender. They're a pretender this year. So let's get your verdicts here. Karim, let's start with you. What's your verdict on the Thunder?
Dude, I'm excited to watch what they do. Just because I did look it up. It looks like just from the offseason, just through all the trades, like Jeremiah Grant coming to Denver, Paul George leaving for the Clips.
Yep.
I mean, they got 7, 8 first round picks, man.
Whoa.
Just not even their own first round picks. Like they still have their
Just
own
pile
first round
them up.
picks. Yeah, they're gonna be able to make some moves later on. They're gonna be able to draft really well later on.
Yeah.
I'm excited for them.
A lot of capital.
I think they're just gonna dud. I don't know. I mean, if it works, it works. I'm gonna root for them when I see them play. I mean, I love my boy Gallo, so and gotta rip the Buffs again. I'll say it. So
No.
I want them to do well. I want them to put up a fight, except when they go up against Denver. But I think they're pretending.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Zach, what's your verdict?
Yeah, definitely a pretender for now, but definitely a team to watch out for in the coming years.
All right, and Marcel.
Yeah, I'm definitely going pretender this season. But I am going to give a little kudos to their management team. Ever since they came over from Seattle, they've been a really relevant team, especially over the last 6 or 7 years when they pushed Golden State to the brink in the Western Conference Finals. They actually went to the finals and lost to LeBron and the Heat. But still, even after they had KD leave and Russ leave and Harden leave and Paul George leave, they have repositioned them super well for a very solid future, and they are still in a very solid playoff position right now. But yeah, like I said on previous podcasts, there's only 3 or 4 teams in the NBA that I'm actually going to count as contenders, and this is not one of them.
Yeah, all right. So we're kind of all on the same page for this one. Not a contender right now, but maybe in the process of writing the book on how to pull off the rebuild. Let's move into the NHL. This week, speaking of aging superstars, a couple who are still performing at a very high level on the Pittsburgh Penguins in Sidney Crosby and Geno Malkin. Even Chris Letang on the back end, maybe a little past his prime more than the other two, but a lot of quality players on the Penguins. They're going to be the 5 seed out east. What are your initial impressions of the Penguins? Let's start with Marshall.
Really quick, I'd just like to say I'm never going to count out Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
I'm not
One of
even
the best
like pulling
players
a
to
Ron
do it.
Rivera here and saying like, hey, cannot count out Cam Newton. Sidney Crosby has been the best player of our generation. You know, Connor McDavid is, breathing down his neck right now. But Sidney Crosby is the consensus best player over the last 20 years. And he has had the sidekick in which if Sidney Crosby was not in the league, a lot of people think that Malkin would have been, the Sidney Crosby of this generation.
He's two elite players.
No matter how old they are, you just cannot count out the Penguins. And they still have a very solid supporting cast. With the emergence of Jake Gensel and Brian Rust and just some, Cahoon. And then their goalies just always seem to they can just cycle goalies all over the place and just figure it out from there. So, although they're not one of my huge favorites coming out of the East, just because the East is so stacked, I still see them, being able to pull something out of their bag of tricks again.
Yeah, to me,
definitely. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
Okay, so to me, definitely the Penguins are a sleeper team to me in the East. Not even just to win a cup, they're a sleeper team. They still have all the talent from their previous runs. They still got the depth in center, especially. Oh my gosh, they got Bukestad, Crosby, Gensel, old players like Marlowe can come in and add some experience to the roster. Not that they need it because they've won back to back. You could just go on and on with these guys. They are so stacked. This is a team that could definitely make a push to win a Stanley Cup this year again. I wouldn't count them out.
Yeah. Karim?
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't feel like there's much to say.
Yeah.
You can't discount Crosby. You can't discount Malkin. After Kessel leaving, I mean, I feel like Malkin's got a fire under his butt. I think he's ready to just play again. I don't know what was going on back then. If there was just all this drama, I don't want to make speculations.
I feel like Malkin's having one of the best seasons of his career this season.
Exactly. I feel like
He's been
Kessel
solid,
leaving
definitely.
has changed it, man.
A couple of players that I'd like to hit on right here. A really big acquisition, a trade deadline acquisition that I'd like to touch on. Billy might have more to add. Is Jason Zucker though, former DU boy.
kid.
Yep, absolutely. Former DU boy has played really well with the team so far. 12 points, 15 games, and is playing that two-way game that they brought him into play. Billy, you can touch on it more here in a second because I know you will probably want to. Another guy, though, is aston-reese. I feel like this guy is a Selke contender. He is one of the best defensive forwards in the entire league. And if you have that type of player that can just go against other teams' top lines and, play that defensive shutdown type role, that's something that you especially need in the playoffs with increased minutes from, the other team's top guns and all that. So,
yeah, I don't know that I'd go so far as to call aston-reese a Selke contender, but definitely a very, very solid defensive forward. They'll probably, for the playoffs, pop him on that third line, let him do his thing, kind of shut down some other high-end forwards that they'll be going up against out in the East. But you touched on Zucker on that first line. I imagine that first line will be Zucker, Crosby, and Gensel. We haven't actually talked much about Gensel, but a very good high-end wing. Another one of those, you get him every few years where they're like, all right, is this guy an elite wing, or is he a good wing that plays next to Crosby? I don't know, but regardless, he's going to put up numbers for him. But Zucker, a big trade deadline acquisition, and we talked about it a lot when we did our video on the Hurricanes. these deadline acquisitions change the layout of a team. This is a better team today than they were before the trade deadline. So I think Zucker is definitely a big move for them. Had the season played out, they might have even caught the Flyers to get into that 4th seed spot. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make some noise in the playoffs, and I definitely believe that they can. Let's get some verdicts here. Does anyone else have any last things to say before we get into these verdicts?
Another thing really quick that I have, talked about on other podcasts is this break is gonna, help with injuries wise. Get some players healthy.
Yeah.
Crosby has dealt with a bunch of injuries this season, so that's good. Like Crosby, in terms of his career, this has been a very down year for him, even though he has 47 points, 41 games played. This is kind of like an offseason for Crosby. Not only that, but Jake Gensel and Connor Sheary have been dealing with season-long injuries, and whether or not that they're going to be coming back for these play-in games in the playoffs, this is another team that can end up benefiting from this little 3-month layoff. So that's all I have to add, but yeah, so.
Yeah, and they've also got veterans who know how to handle an offseason.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you my verdict here first. I think the Penguins are a contender. I don't think they're one of the best of the best contenders, but this is the NHL. Anything can happen, and the Penguins are a very solid team that have been there before. They know how to win a cup, and maybe they do it again this year.
Yeah.
Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go. They're definitely a contender. Like I said earlier, they're my sleeper team to win the Stanley Cup. Yeah, contender.
Yeah. Karim, you want to give your analysis here?
Yeah, man. I think they're contending. They're definitely gonna. They're gonna put up a fight. I mean, like everyone's been saying, Crosby's just next level. Malkin's next level.
Yeah.
Don't count them out until they're out.
Yep. So yeah, they're also a contender for me. And like I've said on previous pods, and I'll probably say this every week if we're going over NHL teams, there are a lot of NHL teams that can contend every single year. But this specifically, like Billy had said, they're not one of my top contenders this year. But I'm not going to ever discount Crosby and Malkin, even if they're like 45 years old. So, yeah, they're a contender for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Eventually, one of these days, we're going to get around to a team that we disagree on, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But for now, our verdict is in. We're calling the Penguins a contender. That's going to do it for this episode, unless you guys have any last things you'd like to touch on.
Nope.
Wait, really quick. Karim, another CU guy, Dinwiddie. He also tested positive.
Oh,
for
he
COVID.
tested positive. I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
He did
all
not
for me.
expect. I don't think he's expected to travel though.
No, he hasn't
I think
like
he's just gonna
came
stay
out
home.
and said specifically yet, but yeah, it's
Right.
pretty likely
All
that
these
it's not going to
positive
be
tests.
traveling, especially because so many like players on Brooklyn are just already like coming out and said they're not going to play. I mean, DeAndre Jordan, like came down with COVID, and then KD and Kyrie. So yeah, but that's all for me.
Yeah. All right. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you want to see us talk about some more teams next week, we'll be going over the Vegas Golden Knights and the Toronto Raptors. Switch up our conferences a little bit. We've been a little one-sided in each league. But that's all for today. We'll see you in our next episode.